Well,
Yeah, good.
we'll make this fun and engaging, okay? Bringing inclusivity into your future workplace. So I'm going to go over some statistics around discrimination and harassment. So according to a Williams Institute survey in 2021, nearly half of LGBT workers have experienced unfair treatment at work at some point in their lives. And of those respondents, those LGBTQ plus employees of color were more likely to report being denied jobs at 11%, I think to an overall 9%, and then verbal harassment at 36%, with an overall of 26% for the respondents. Many LGBT employees reported engaging in covering behaviors to avoid harassment or discrimination at work. That might mean changing up whatever their presentation is, holding it whenever they need to go to the bathroom, anything in that regard to avoid moments of conflict, right? 34 respondents left their job due to discrimination and harassment of this kind. So who's all of this information relevant to? Who's who's it relevant on inclusivity in the workplace? It's on all of us, actually, because we have this shared responsibility in the workplace for having an inclusive environment. So, once you join up in any sort of workplace, once you're hired, once you are participating as an employee, you are this active participant, not this passive, standby person or bystander. So what might a lack of inclusivity and diversity in the workplace mean? And by that, I mean, what's the impact, right, of inclusivity and diversity? And therefore, what do we lose, right? So we have a limited range of perspectives. I think straight from a business strategy, you can look at it as the room's not going to be as engaging, right? But also on the other side of it, the very human side of it, that the group kind of becomes very monotonous, very homogenous, and for that reason, the variance of perspectives is lost in that. So this impact's felt in the product itself. That doesn't matter what you're doing, what your business is. Every business has a product. Every business has an outcome. And so if you are intending anything for those specific audiences and folks who are working on that product are not part of that community, it becomes apparent in the product itself. So we're not just talking about, for instance, I think about that rainbow washing during June. You can kind of just tell whenever companies are just slinging out products, right? But also we're talking about, making sure that products that are meant for the community are made by those in the community too. So, take for instance, making sure that all of your stuff is accessible for those who may have difficulties accessing it as well. So poor communication, it fuels conflict. So not just interpersonal communication within the workplace, but also again, we get down to maybe your product is communication, in which case if your PR is not on that, and that only really tends to work if you have folks who are again within those communities that are impacted by that language. So we're talking about hiring consultants. We're talking about making sure that your workplace is as inclusive and diverse as it can be. And then, of course, this last part is key: a lack of support for your fellow employees. So, or in other words, I guess you could say, A lack of inclusivity and diversity breeds a lack of inclusivity and diversity, right? Folks aren't going to want to be parts of businesses and organizations that they don't feel themselves represented in. If they're in situation in which they have to self-advocate at every opportunity, again, they're not going to feel comfortable being there, and they probably, the retention at that workplace will suffer. So again, even if it's not necessarily directly, impacting, depending on what specific discriminations or lack of inclusivity, you still feel the impact on the work culture, right? So, whenever we're looking for an inclusive work atmosphere, whether that's for yourself, whether that's for others, or maybe you're just wanting to gauge just how inclusive a workplace is. There's a few ways that you can do that before arriving to that position. So check the post descriptions online on Indeed, check them on LinkedIn, check them on any sort of job posting website. Do they have an inclusivity statement? Do they have anything about that they are valuing these voices and those experiences? Are they having that come across in any way? Because not only is that saying that, of course, you're wanting to have a more inclusive and diverse workforce, but also you've put your money where your mouth is. And of course, those statements typically are crafted by those who, again, they hire consultants to craft those statements, right? So assessing through marketing. So we're talking about, making sure that they are projecting, again, an image through their social medias, various ones, Twitter, X, Facebook, what have you. How are they doing? Are they approaching the subject? Are they not approaching the subject? That kind of thing. And are they doing it well? Are they getting good feedback for that? And then lastly, inquiring during interview. That's the hardest part because, again, you were bringing into the process potential for conflict, but asking about that during an interview not only signals to the employer that that's something that is coming up as as an interested point in those interviews, but it's also showing and allowing you to, again, in the process of looking for an inclusive work atmosphere, uh, strain those that you are interested in versus those you're not interested in. So perhaps if they get enough questions, then they might again feel the pressure to start approaching that topic, right? So what does institutional inclusion look like? We're talking about non-discrimination policy that includes sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. We're talking about an inclusive workplace forms and office announcements that reflect everyone's identity, sexual orientation, and family structure. Holding safe zone training so staff can earn their safe zone stickers and pins and increase workplace diversity or visibility around LGBTQ inclusion. And we do that here at SIU, and we do that regionally as well for other institutions as well. So even private companies can ask about our safe zone stuff and receive information. Reducing gender separations wherever possible, including bathrooms, locker rooms, dress codes, employee sports teams, et cetera. Offering single stall, all gender facilities if possible. And then, of course, showing support for LGBTQ plus equality as an organization / business by marching in the local Pride Parade or creating an LGBTQ plus exhibit during Pride Month in June. So, organizations can participate in that. So what does personal commitment look like? May seem intuitive. It's committing to continually learning through culture and media. So again, we're looking for two things: an open mind and a willingness to grow. Those are the two key ingredients for allyship, right? Knowing those best practices for pronouns, which I'll get into in a moment. Combating generalizations and assumptions within your own thinking. So how are you maybe coming to the situation and saying, oh, I didn't realize that I had thought that, but they didn't necessarily tell me that, right? And then moving from ally to advocate when the situation calls for it. So, and we'll get into some of those next, actually. Yeah, hypotheticals. So a staff member shares at a meeting that they are trans and would like everyone to use the new name Trey and the pronouns they, them, theirs. While everyone at the staff meeting is very positive and affirming in the moment, afterwards there's a lot of confusion and hesitancy about how to proceed. They aren't sure how to let others know what to do when they mess up pronouns/names, what other types of support Trey may want or need. How might you proceed? And also just read them. So you can ask Trey, hey Trey, I want to thank you for sharing that important information with me and let you know that I'm here to support you in this process. I realize that I may have gaps in my knowledge around different challenges you may face. And so if there's anything that I can do to help that I'm not doing or not doing well, please let me know. You can also practice using their name and pronouns regardless of if they're around. Get in the habit of using this person's new name and pronouns whenever you talk about them. If you want additional practice, ask a colleague to listen to you while you tell a story about the first time you and Trey met or an experience that you had with Trey using the new name and pronouns the entire time. And acknowledge, apologize, move on when you mess up. So, yeah, that was Trey's idea. They were saying you can sometimes simply correct yourself and move on without an apology. Though sometimes after repeated mistakes, it makes sense to apologize. However, apologize for them and not for you. And then lastly, if you learn something new, ask if you can share it with the group. If you mess up and Trey says, I'd rather you just correct yourself than spend your time apologizing. Ask if this is information you can share with others if they're wondering. There's going to be a lot of practice in educating and Trey doesn't have to do it alone. So again, moving from allyship to advocacy. And then the second one, you've noticed a fellow staff member making comments that are subtly transphobic or homophobic, which are making you and others uncomfortable. You're unsure if this person realizes what they're saying is problematic or not. What might you do? So keyword here, of course, is where is it at? Unsure, right? You're unsure if this person is realizing what they're saying is problematic or not. And oftentimes that is the case. They may have some sort of joke. You may not, again, 100% see it as, you may not be personally offended in yourself, but others in the room, you may see an unease for them, right? So in order to stop it from being a self-advocacy situation, maybe you come up to that staff member as well and ask, about what's going on there. So what does that look like? Asking to chat with this person, let them know that you've noticed and give an example. Make sure to relate in. When giving feedback, relate in to the person. I used to mess up all the time, and while it took some practice at getting better, I've noticed people feel more at ease around me now. Strategize, talk with another staff member about how to respond in the moment to negative comments. Come up with a response that feels appropriate and try it out the next time this person makes a comment. Delegate. Perhaps you know that you're not willing to connect with this person directly. Find somebody who would be and support them approaching this person. So again, that's especially if, let's say you're coming at it and that you're personally, made uncomfortable about that situation because maybe you feel targeted by that. Somebody else can step up to the plate, right? Just ask. Say, hey, is it possible you could maybe talk to him? I don't know. I felt uncomfortable, right? And then some keys to success. Give them the benefit of the doubt that they likely didn't mean to make anybody uncomfortable and don't realize that it's having that effect. Again, unsure, right? Highlight that this is not about that this is not about their identity, but their actions, right? A lot of times people take things as a personal attack, so be sure to speak to and focus on the behavior of the person and not on their identity or whether they're a good or a bad person, right? So best practices for pronouns. I keep it simple, right? A word that replaces a noun in a sentence. So that's she, her, they, them, he, him. You get the idea. Pronouns aren't new. They are part of a sentence, have been for, since the beginning of, well, I guess any language, but right. So use them every day. And that sentence was 40% pronouns by volume. you, them, right? That's Phoebe. She is talking. That's her voice. She calls herself Phoebe, right? So if they're replacing the noun in the sentence, what's the noun in the last sentence? That's Phoebe, right? So she calls herself Phoebe could be Phoebe calls Phoebe Phoebe, but instead we're again taking those words and we're replacing them. So she calls herself Phoebe. Pronouns do not equal gender presentation or gender identity. So how do you know? Somebody might go by pronouns that you may think, oh, I think they look like he, him, or she, her, or something like that. Just ask, right? It's simple. So that's how you find it out. You share yours and then ask theirs, and in that order, right? Hi, I'm not sure we've met before. My name is Marla, and my pronouns are she, her. You could wait a beat, right? They may say it themselves, but you could also just follow it up with what are your name and pronouns? But others will likely share freely, prompted by your introduction. So, keeps it simple. That may feel like, oh, I have to inject something new into the beginning of my sentence every single time. And so there's also some more ways that you can make that apparent that you may not have to share it every single time, right? So where else can you show your support and share your pronouns? So we're talking about the LinkedIn profile. We're talking about the email signature, the name tag, the business cards, the Teams, Zoom, or other video conferencing technologies. I'm sure there's more, but these are going to be the most visible that we're going to see. And this, again, it doesn't just show, you're not just sharing a piece of information about yourself, right? Because this is how you want to be referred to as, but you're also showing, again, that you are wanting to be a part of that change, part of that inclusivity in the workplace, right? So we have up here, that's the LinkedIn profile. They have an option there. Comes right after the name. We have it in the email signature down here. I have a little Y thing. You don't necessarily need to have that. I happen to need that for my position, just so folks can feel educated on where to find that. I think it leads to pronouns.org or something like that to give some more information. So committing to learn, right? What are potential learning outlets to have social and educational exposure to LGBTQIA plus culture? We have, yeah, there's a few ways. They may not be completely on one's radar as well, but uh, trying to find those movies, TV shows, documentaries, something about LGBTQIA plus movies, right? Gives you a way in without necessarily, it's pretty low risk, low sum. You can watch it, do it, and then you'll know a little bit later, right? Books, articles, magazines, some kind of reading. And then lastly, we have local events, organizations, and resources. Those are, again, going to be a bit more public. If you're more, again, a little socially anxious about it, you can, of course, do either of those first two options. And I happen to have a good resource for that. If you go to the suggested media tab of the LGBTQ Resource Center website, I have all that information on there. There's the link, there's the QR code. And yeah, we're building stuff on there all the time. It's got, again, documentaries, movies, TV shows. I think I have podcasts on there. I think I have web series on there. It's extensive, and we're still building more and more on there. So all kinds of stuff on there if you want to check that out. But